pressing record, which I realized we hadn't done. So we share this with some people who couldn't attend. So starting off with culture surveys, let's go back where we are. So as I say, culture is something that you either consciously choose to influence or take your chances. And it's like the garden. Do you let it go wild, and you can choose to do that and form whatever it wants to turn out like, or you choose to shape it and influence and end up with what you desire or what would be beneficial in your garden, and weeding out those weeds you don't want. We would talk about weeding out the behaviors you don't want to see. So going back onto culture surveys are a way of getting a baseline in here. So some things we'll cover today, but we'll blast on here. So in the chat, or come on off a mute and tell us why do culture surveys? Why should we do them? Why should we do culture surveys?
Okay, well, I'll jump in
Yeah.
quickly. Well, for me, it's always it's a good understanding. It's a feedback almost. It's understanding where is your starting point, right? The baseline, understanding, what drives, what motivates, where we are, basically status quo.
Where we are. So getting that baseline, Violetta, absolutely. Finding out just where you are, what the thoughts are, exactly. And Kate said to get a view from across the business and not just one level. Absolutely. And we'll be touching on that, Kate, as well. Really, really key. How do you get it from across the business? It's really hard to get it from across the business, but making sure you're getting that and using it as a baseline, and then also using it as a measure, so you can compare from year to year. Are we getting better? Are we moving that dial or not? You know, culture can be a very arbitrary, kind of a fluffy word. You know, what is it? What are we actually doing and measuring? Culture can be something. I had a conversation during the week, and they were saying the first thing they were going to do was explain to the employees what culture was, because everyone thought culture was, if you don't go for beers on Friday, you don't have a culture. But culture is how we act, how we interact, and how we react. And all of those on an everyday basis in meetings, how we do projects, how we get stuff done, but how we behave around each other is the culture. So, but measuring that, how do you measure it, and where do you start? But once you have that baseline, oh my God, how valuable is that to be able to come back and say, have we moved that dial or not? And then if you're a larger organization where you can actually divide into shops, locations, departments, and actually have some comparison and see where things work better, even better. And if your company is smaller, you won't have the opportunity to do that because you want to keep it anonymous. So are there any other ideas, guys, on why we would do culture surveys? Any other ideas? If you consider why work on the culture in the first place? That's another way of looking at it. So the team feel heard. Absolutely, Kate. Yes, that you're doing listening, that you care about what they have got to say. Absolutely. And but also to make sure your culture is aligned with your strategy. It creates some accountability. Hey, the leadership have the responsibility to create a culture. And we need some accountability. Numbers help accountability. Culture is a KPI, is our ultimate goal. And getting that accountability, helping people feel heard, baselining, hearing from across the business, helps recruitment and retention. If you can show what your culture is like and share that on recruiting and hiring, you know, there's such a fight for talent right now. Demonstrating what a good culture you have, it's a way of finding out what's golden about your culture. But it also helps you work out what should you be focusing on and what should you not be focusing on. What should you be keeping and maintaining and going, this is great, we want to keep that. But also, what are those areas that you need to focus on to get better? Because we can't focus on everything. We'll have to pick. We'll have to be cruel and pick something. But without doing the kind of survey or other listening mechanisms. How do we actually find that out? Absolutely. Right. So that's culture surveys on why we do them. Going back to what Kate said here across the business, I love this diagram reminding us that, you know, at the top level, we see 4% of the problems, and the staff, the majority of employees see 100% of the problems. And we can sometimes live in a bubble when we're part of that leadership. And how do you ensure that you're hearing that voice? So not only across the organization, but also so for different departments, different levels, different experiences, and sometimes the results can even clash. Some are having a great experience, some are not. But having that sensor and making sure you're able to hear what you want to hear is 100% of the problems. So I love this diagram, and we use it a lot to remind ourselves that we need to find out. So one thing we want to touch on is, because we talk about culture surveys, we need to clarify, are we talking about deep dive surveys? So they're your larger, that you do less frequently, maybe 6 months or every year. Or our main one has 52 questions around numerous topics, which we'll talk about, and then has some open questions, you know, what works well around here, what doesn't work so well, so maybe some free text in there as well. So they're your deep dive surveys. So I want to check all of these areas. I want to find out which ones are working well, which ones are not. Culture pulses are also surveys, but they're smaller, more on the pulse. How is the feeling right now? And it's live. So we recommend pulses really frequently every month to find out, is that dial moving? Because you don't want to wait to do your culture survey next year to find out actually a lot can happen in a year. We want to be making sure we're doing that temperature check along the way. So their culture pulse is short, 3 questions maximum, fast, take 30 seconds to fill, and to find out what is the sentiment right now. So we'll talk a little bit more about deep dive surveys today, because pulses are those smaller ones that you do along the in between. But just really important to clarify deep dive surveys versus your pulse. So out from the guys here in the chat, who does deep dive surveys and who does pulse surveys today? Have you done deep dives or pulses? Type in the chat there if you've done a deep dive or a pulse, or if you do regular deep dives. We do both. Brilliant. Done both the past. Excellent. Both in previous businesses. Good. Super. So you have some experience of experiencing both. Deep dive annually, pulse quarterly. Brilliant, Kate. You've done both as well, Liz. Brilliant. Okay, so just to get your heads around 5 stages to a great culture, and where do culture surveys fit in. We talk about getting intel on your culture. So a survey might be there. That's that baselining. But there's also lots of other ways, and I'm going to share some other ways of getting culture intel. We talk about designing the culture, your purpose, values, and those specific behaviors you want to measure. Activating the culture, bringing it alive, then embedding it into the DNA of the company is stage 4. How do you get it in all the veins across the company? And then measuring so that you have that accountability day in, day out, is that ultimate, all leading to a brilliant culture. So that is our 5-step process. And we have what we run is a Culture Smart certification for leaders, where they can come in and learn how to do each of those stages and get all the ideas and the templates and the tools to be able to do all of those as part of our Culture Smart community. We have a Culture Smart certification. So there's the 5 stages, where the ultimate one is when culture is a KPI. So that's really using your surveys to the max. So right, we'll come back and talk a little bit more. Right, so pitfall, because today is all about what are the pitfalls that you can fall into, that So we do surveys across companies. We now have our Culture Smart, where we have leaders going back into their own companies, using our tools and doing surveys in their companies. And these are the pitfalls that we have come across, the most common pitfalls. The first one, and the most detrimental one, is lack of action post-survey. So we do the survey, all enthusiastic, especially when it's one of the first surveys we do. Everyone makes that big effort. The result comes out and nothing happens. So when you go back to do another survey, it is very hard to get engagement. You can also radically impact that negative morale, or so on the morale, there can be a real negative. Trust can go, and then you get the, well, what's the point? Do we actually even care? So really critical. So one of the advices we give our Culture Smart leaders is, do not embark on a survey unless there is clear commitment to action some of the points. Now, what's really good, which we'll come to as well, is you're not going to action everything. You're going to pick what's your top thing you're going to action. We all say pick 3, but pick your top one and then 2 other ones, and everything else we obviously have to follow, because if we try and action everything, we'll end up doing nothing. And being really clear on what that is. So actioning. So we went out to, did a LinkedIn poll this week and asked, have you observed incidences where organizations failed to take action on culture survey findings? So the biggest sin around culture surveys is not taking action. And we have yes, 100% of the people who took part in the voting said they had experienced that. So imagine the impact on employee morale, on trust, staff turnover, if you give all this payback, or you give all this information and nothing actually happens. So previously we've reminded, Pete wrote on the actions that were completed, as people tend to have a very short memory. Oh, Pete, perfect, because you're leading into one of my other pitfalls. Absolutely brilliant. We'll come to that as well. So pitfall number 2, inadequate. Pete's perfect segue into inadequate communication before and after a deep dive survey. So Pete, you asked about engagement into a survey, the pre-communication that needs to go on why we're doing it, what's the value, what will be the impact is really important. And that has to be over a period and reminded that the survey is coming. Humans, we have to hear something 7 times before it goes in. So keeping that in mind, repeating what's happening, what's coming, is the before the survey. And then after the survey, as Pete said, relaying back what actions we're doing and how they are going. And this goes on until you do the next survey. Remind. This is what we know we don't do this well. This is what we're planning to do. This is what we have done. And this is what's next. Again, the following month. So your newsletter is a great way to communicate that. Town halls, every opportunity that you can communicate. This is what we've done. We know we're not brilliant yet, but this is what we've done about this topic that you raised. We hear your voices. Bailey of Bristol, one of our clients, they do the We've Heard You sessions. And that's the feedback that they got, and they relay what they're doing, because they say, we know we're bad in this area and but this is what we're doing because we want to be better. And this is what we've done last month. And this is what we're going to do next month, holding ourselves accountable. So, but repeat, not just once, as Pete said, repeat. What's happening, and updates. We have very short memories. Very, very true. So that's pitfall number 2. So 1, taking action. 2, communicating that action after the survey and before the survey, prepping people on why this would be really valuable to take part. So that feeds in a little bit to the engagement as well, Pete, on how to get engagement in these surveys. So there may be legacy negativity towards surveys where I've done one before here, nobody took action. So having to overcome that and maybe even being honest about that may be part of that pre-communication as well. So pitfall number 3, what else do we fall into? Not recognizing potential barriers of non-desk-based workers to engage in surveys. So this is a real key one. If you've non-desk-based workers, very commonly hourly workers who are not sitting at a computer, what are the barriers that they come across? So, and how can we overcome them? How do you ensure that they engage in the survey as well? Because remember, if we want to hear that 100%, let's make sure that we're overcoming any barriers. Do you guys do anything special for non-desk-based workers or hourly workers in surveys to get responses? Violetta, you've just come off mute there.
Yeah. I mean, what we do is we do create a QR code because most of them will have mobile phones, and they can just obviously scan the code and takes them to the survey. They can do it quickly. We also set up a desktop computer in the canteen as well for people, but with the space, so kind of so they have some privacy as well. That's it. But
brilliant.
Looking to hear for more ideas.
That's super fantastic. And Pete added in offering chocolate. Amazing. So all of those ideas help. What else do we come? So I see spelling mistake with perception of time. So the 4 barriers that we come across on desk-based worker or non-desk-based workers is this perception of time. So they're sitting at their computer, they've got the time to fill out these surveys, I have to do it in my own time, why is that? Or they've more time to do this than we are out on the shop floor. So creating that time. So some of our clients, they have given them 15-20 minutes where they're invited in. Chocolate is good offer, Pete, or croissants and coffee, where they come in and they are, we call them, treat them like the VIPs. It increases that engagement, saying, we are going to pay you for this 15 minutes where you come in and fill out our surveys. The QR code one is an absolute brilliant one. So that is the tech side. A lot of the time people don't want to be going on emails. They're nervous about links, especially if you've multi-generational. The young ones will be, of course, real tech savvy. Maybe the more older generations will not be, and they are nervous, so they just don't do it. Having QR codes scan straight into the survey, brilliant. So Violetta, that is one of our high recommendations, doing the QR codes. So either you have individual ones, of course, if you're wanting feedback on certain departments, but putting it around the canteen, having the QR codes as part of the newsletter, but lay them out on paper on the table in the canteen, so as they're sitting having their cuppa, that they could scan and do it. So just making it as easy as possible. Language, of course, can be an issue. So 2 ways to tackle that: have your survey translated, but we've also had it where we have had big groups. For example, in one we had a high Polish population, so we had one really great Polish speaker in the non-desk-based workers. She came in, she sat in the room while the Polish people were completing it, and she was there to translate any of the more nuanced questions where it can be quite difficult. And that was really helpful. So they read it and they asked her, what does this question mean? So they're all filling it out on their devices, and she was there to support. Having a desktop somewhere also helps massively. Frequency, we noticed that, of course, if you're desk-based, you're on your email so much more frequently. If you're only sending it out by email, the non-desk-based workers will not be on there as often. So they may even see it. They may even want to take part, but because they're not on it as often, they're not getting reminded as much to do it. So take into consideration, if email is your only route, is there other ways you can reach the non-desk-based workers? We paid employees that did the survey and training in their own time. Absolutely fantastic, Adriana. Love that. really, you know, making them feel that they are valued and that their time is valued, and appreciating their non-desk based. So pitfall number 4, misinterpreting non-engagement as survey fatigue. So this is one which we have, we often come across as we've got low engagement, or is it survey fatigue? We know, which is it? Do we ask too often? Are they just sick of us asking, or do they just not care? Working that out can be a real game changer. And we would say that anyone who relies just on culture surveys can really struggle here. You need an array of listening mechanisms. So how else are we going to find out the voice of the employee? Because the more methods you have that, the more chances you have of hearing. So relying only on surveys as a listening, what other listening mechanisms do you guys have? So, or what other ones have you heard of or that you use? How else do you hear the voice of the employees besides culture surveys? And then we'll share some words. Violetta.
Yeah, well, we have a kind of we call it the Bing Hive. So it's a group which has representatives from each department, and the idea is that, you know, we will do a pulse survey, we'll look at the results, and it's that group that we would like to engage with to try and find solutions, trying really to kind of shift a little bit the dynamic, so it's more bottom-up engagement rather than just top-down. But it's difficult. It's not easy, but that's another way that we engage or get information from across the business.
Listening mechanism, fantastic. And I see Kate has written, we had a culture group with 1 rep from each team. Amazing. An employee group where you're using it to find out about the culture and work on the culture and make things better. Absolutely. So we have a little infograph that we will share with you after, if you're interested, on different listening mechanisms that we have. We will send it to you in the big form, but we talk about really encouraging people just to tell their managers, have an open door policy, employee feedback forums. That's like the Beehive that Violetta mentioned. Suggestion boxes, both digital and physical, are another way. Focus groups on certain areas. So if something comes out from the some area comes out from the survey, doing focus groups around that area can really help work out what does not work in this area and what do we actually need. Exit interviews is a great way to find out about what's great about the culture and what's not. However, it's always too late when it's the exit interview. So stay interviews is one. Oh, Chloe, that's great. No problem. Brilliant. And we'll definitely be watching the recording. Absolutely. That's great, Chloe. Thanks so much. Stay interviews is a big one. You know, exit interviews is too late. I want to know stuff earlier. So stay interviews. Why the heck do you stay around? What do you like it about here? What doesn't work so good? What would you change from the company today? So really great one, stay interviews. Great question to ask in a stay interview is, what's one thing another company could offer you to make you consider to move? If you have some high talents that you're trying to keep that are really valuable to you, make sure you're asking them that question. Review websites. What's Glassdoor saying about your company, or other social media platforms? Find out what's been said about you. Pulse surveys. So again, the culture surveys are the deep dive, but doing some pulse, asking about specific areas of the culture, great way to find out. One of the ones that we've love to do, speed dating with leadership. I used to do this in the company I ran in Sweden. We had a factory of like 800, and we used to do speed dating with leadership, really 15-minute cup of coffee where the leadership had to ask 3 questions from someone on the shop floor. And they were always felt really recognized when they were selected to do a speed date. And then the leadership had to feed back into the meeting, into the leadership meeting, what they heard during the week. So speed dating with leadership, really, really great one. Our third-party facilitators doing workshops, finding out is a great way as well of finding out what works great and what doesn't work great. So we'll share that infographic with you as well after. Oh, suddenly decided that that's the end. One sec. Pitfall number 5, not asking the right questions. So here I'm, of course, biased questions, which you'll all be very aware of, is, not directing someone down, keeping them open questions is really important. But what topics you're covering. So the topics I have our survey here, the topics we cover is around engagement. Do we have a culture of high performance? What about, we ask questions about what the employee thinks about the leadership, about the organization, about their manager, their team. We ask about their current role. We ask about growth and development, some questions. We ask about well-being. We ask about the culture, and then their views. So they are the different topics that we cover in about like 52 questions is our one. But I'm going to share you my top 2 culture questions, really important, is these 2 questions. So 2 great culture questions. So the behavior of our leaders is consistent with the company values, and the behavior of the people I work with is consistent with the company values. So our spell check person is going to get is going to be in major trouble. So I see 2 spelling mistakes. So one sec. And if I say that's me, then I can only blame myself. So spell check Marita didn't do very well today. So here we go. Let me share that again. So now that I've corrected, because I can't look at them. There we go. So rate the following. The behavior of our leaders is consistent with the company values, and then list them. And the behavior of the people I work with is consistent with the company values. So these 2 questions, golden. What do we think about the leaders? Are they complying with our culture? Are they living and breathing our culture? And what about the people around me? Really great 2 questions. Jump on those and make sure we're asking them. This is a great way for accountability as well. That first question is a great way of bringing the leadership and feeding back to them how well they're living the culture. So there with culture surveys in a speed round of in our session. Any questions around culture surveys? Come on in. If you've any, or type in the chat. Let me open the chat again there. Any other questions, or come on in and consider. Any questions? Good. All right. No clarifying questions. You're all good. So lots of oh, please, Violetta, go for it.
Very quick question. Okay, so just an example. So we run a pulse survey. There was one area that everybody highlighted as a problematic area. We decided to put this in front of the employee forum, so we all together can find a solution. And it just didn't work. So the employee forum, this person couldn't attend that. It just dragged. So at the end of the day, again, it had to be the leadership that had to make the decision on how to improve on X. And I really don't want that to be the case. So it's how do you engage? So people say something's wrong. How do you get them to act on it rather than being this complaining, when there is like, that doesn't work, that doesn't work, that doesn't work. But it has to, the effort has to come from both sides to make it work sometimes. I don't believe it's just the leadership that can fix it. There has to be some desire to fix it. Or how do we generate that engagement? That's my example.
In fixing the problem, you mean?
Yeah, on finding a solution. So there is an area that is problematic. And I really want to see that engagement between the people who said it's problematic together with the leadership finding a solution rather than just being put forward, and solutions being put forward by the leadership. Because it's better by ink, isn't it? If the people had their say into it, but it's getting the engagement. And lots of people saying we're just too busy, don't have time to attend and all of that, which is great. So but yeah, we haven't been able to get to a point where we can agree or engage with them. So now probably the next stage will be to do another survey to say, okay, so how do we do it through a survey rather than through a group, you know, where you would have a little bit more free dialogue, I think. But
do you mean asking for suggestions out there on a survey? Yeah,
I think so. I think so. I don't know. I mean, I'm asking actually it's a question more than I don't have a solution.
Yeah, so I mean, if do you have if you have that employee focus group, putting responsibility on them to come with some suggestions and solutions, and can the leadership be there together? Can they do it together? I would say, instead of like, this is the leadership ideas, it's the employee making sure we're communicating, these are the ideas that we've come with. And you can go out and get a feedback on a survey on them, but also getting that culture behind. When I'd step back a bit and go, one of the things I love is in your values, because I hear what's important to you is people not complaining but not doing anything about it. Yeah, so when you have your purpose, your values, translating your values into teachable and measurable behaviors is really key. And if that is an important one, having that as a behavior, you know, that we don't moan unless we're ready to do something about it. Because then you can feed back and say, Marita, that's the third time I've heard you moaning about that. What are you doing about it in your area? What are you willing to do about it? Because you remember, an important behavior in our culture is we don't moan unless we're going to do something about it. And that's a really great way of setting a great foundation, because otherwise it's really good to say, that's not right, but I'm not willing to do anything about it. It's getting that engagement. Also, another thing, recognizing people who actually do take action or come with suggestions. And you can even like recognizing reward, saying, oh my God, that's brilliant. Came with 3 ideas. Even when we didn't take any of them on, but that was super, ideas came on board. We're going to put them on the plan for future. So rewarding that behavior you want to see. What do you want? You want to see people coming forward with ideas, the forum group that is really, so having some focused, maybe more than one forum group, because also a bit of competition always helps. Is another way of saying, you take this topic and you take that topic, so you're not competing. But there is that, we want to be the forum that's been recognized. Oh, look, that forum got picked out in the town hall and given a real recognition for the great work they did around this. So that's the behavior we want to see.
Thank you. Thank you.
No problem. Good. Right. Welcome, Melanie. We're at the kind of other end of it, but you're more than welcome in. So just a reminder, we have our Culture Smart is where we bring leaders in and we teach them and give them the tools and give them anything they need to be able to do this back in their own workplace. So having that survey that I have hanging here, being able to do it, having all those techniques on how to do it. How do you make the QR code? How do you make a culture plan? How do you have an operating system that we make sure that culture is embedded in each part and is improving every month? How you design the culture and how you make your culture forward. So really, really key on each step. So if any of this resonates or anything around surveys, if you want to just jump on a call with us, we do a half an hour where we talk about where is your culture at now, where you want it to be, what strategies might help you, and then if Culture Smart would be the right thing or a help for you guys. I just shoved that in the chat now, and it'll also come out in the email to you after if you want to book in. But there should be some slots still available. Let's actually just make sure there is. Let's share the screen. So how you do it is you'll be brought into something like this, and then you pick a date and you see there's 1 slot available on Monday, 3 on Tuesday, and 1 on Wednesday. If you want to book that time to go through where your culture is at now. So that's it very quickly, and then you just select that, put in your email, and it'll automatically set up a call for you. So last but not least, oh, no. Come out, and just if we want to go around, I'd love to hear what your gem from today was, because we always want to have impact and make sure your time was valuable today. What was your gem from today? What did you take away and say, God, that's golden, I'm going to grab that, if you have one, and something you're going to do after now. Now, what are you going to do with that information to make sure we have giving you some ideas? So anyone want to come in? So either doing in the chat what your gem and pledge is, or really, so prompts, good to know more about you guys. Great, Kate. Pete, execs only know 4% of the problem. So true. So Violet, if I can start with you, you're a star, my star participant today. What did you take away from today, and what are you going to do about it?
Oh, thank you very much. I really enjoyed it. It's what I really appreciated is very practical advices and information. So I've got a few notes here. Stay interviews. Excellent. We do. we absolutely do exit interviews, but stay interviews. And I did know the questions, 3 questions, which gold. Speed dating with leadership. I love that. So I think we definitely going to look into that. Really good idea. And that leadership employee forum. So for me, that was it, because so to date I was told, well, no, we want the employee forums to be only kind of made by employees. We don't want anybody from the leadership, so everybody can open up. But maybe from time to time we need to have a session together. So thank you. It was really useful.
Brilliant, Violet. Delighted. Adriana said speed dating is something that I'm implementing at the moment. Oh, magic, Adriana. Music to my heart. Absolutely. Anyone else want to come in and share what they took from today, or write it in the chat? Kate and Pete, if you want to write in the chat, because I know you're on the chat. So Melanie, I came to hear you talk about people, not just moaning. They should come with solutions. Yeah, oh, brilliant, Melanie. That's a really great one. And if you have it as a defined behavior, saying this is one of our behaviors related to our values, this is something that we live and breathe, and it's teachable and it's measurable. You can use it in performance reviews. You can use it in one-to-ones. It's something you can tell whether someone is doing it or not. But yeah, so easy to criticize. We're all humans. We're brilliant at criticizing, but actually when we take action. So yeah, behaviors within the value statements. So we really push that. So purpose, the values, but the behaviors, if you can get those clear, that's what will make or break your culture. Kate, and making a real positive example to those who come with the solutions. Oh, rewarding and recognizing people who come with solutions. Absolutely brilliant. We used to even put it in some people's goals. In when I had my factory, is that they each had to come with a problem and a solution to something outside of their job in the company. Got some great ideas. Super. Okay, so make sure you book in a call so that we can talk about where culture is at for you and where you'd like it to be. So Pete has added in for me. I've moved from companies with very established surveys and actions against values to 1 to none. But I've been hired to bring some of this in. This will help putting together a proposal for directors. Mega, Pete. And jump on a call and we can talk some more. Melanie, I wish I'd been there to talk about how difficult it is to define, build and maintain culture in super, Melanie. We'll include that in the next, maybe the next topic. Definitely diverse communication before and after is key. For whether they're all together or whether they're GI dispersed. That's one of my big ones. You know, selling the culture, why we're doing it, what's the purpose and value and impact, and then what we've done after. Melanie, we talked some more about that in the session. Super. Right, guys, I have kept you 6 minutes over, so my timekeeping has been a black mark today for that. But it was with complete enthusiasm and such great questions and comments. You've been fantastic. I love when people are using this session to try and get some value. Not as bad as my timekeeping. Oh, Melanie, we're just glad you came. We're just glad you joined in. That's the most important. So brilliant. Make sure you book in a session. Great to have you guys. And I'll send out the infographic to you for the listening mechanisms. We'll send out the link and the recording to you guys as well. So thank you so much for joining. Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Adriana. Great session as usual. Thank you for that. Love that. Thanks. Great. See you guys.
Thank you.